if your goal is to do this. And then keep watching. Hey guys, my name is Zach Ferguson, and this channel is all about helping you guys reach your tricking goals. I may not be the best tricker, but hopefully my experience can help you guys become the best. This is a tutorial for a cartwheel to front flip, or a cart front for short. A cart front is my preferred method to learn a cart full, and it's a really cool trick to finish your combos with because a lot of people don't have control over their cart fronts, and it's kind of, even though it's a relatively easy trick, is more unorthodox to see once you get to a certain level because a lot of people will just do fulls and not do lower progressions. So you can sometimes surprise people by doing a cart front to end your combos. It can also help you a lot if you're trying to learn Arabians and you don't have them yet, because this is kind of like a half step between a front flip and a round off Arabian. But my daughter is asleep and I have pizza over there waiting on the counter for me, so let's go ahead and get to the quick tutorial. All right, so what is a cart front? A cart front is simply a cartwheel where you keep your hips facing away from your direction of momentum, and then you do a front flip. So some people call it a cart Arabian, some people call it a cart front. It's somewhere in the middle because you can do it just like an Arabian and keep your hips squared and go straight up and then turn. Or you can do it where your feet are planted and your hips are pretty much turned towards your direction of momentum and then you just front flip. Or you can even do it where you cartwheel and then you pivot all the way to here and you're facing your direction of momentum and then you front flip. The only issue with the last one is that it's really hard to get height, because if you block with your hips facing this way, you'll get a lot more height naturally just because of the way the physics work of the move, rather than turning this way, because then you're gonna have to reach up really, really hard and resist using your back muscles to get height. This way, if you're here, you can just reach your arms up and you'll automatically go up and then you just have to lean. Whereas this way, it's very easy to go down, so you feel like you're being pushed into the ground if your hips and your feet are facing your direction of momentum when you cart front. So my recommendation would be to think of it like a cart Arabian, but spot like it's a cart front, somewhere in the middle. We'll get there. So I'm gonna give you 3 different methods for this tutorial, and you don't need a front flip, but it's gonna be so much more helpful to you if you already know how to do just a running front flip. If you don't, you can still use 2 other methods, but I think the easiest method is definitely to already have a front flip and just do a cart front. It's really a simple tutorial, but I want to go over it anyway because I want to cover everything so that you guys have that information if you need it. So for method number 1, we are just gonna do it. We're gonna do a cartwheel to front flip. I'm gonna show you how to connect the 2 moves in a safe manner. So go ahead and warm up your front flip, whether you're doing it on spring floor and you're punching, or you're doing a split step, or even if you have a Webster, you can still do a cart front with a Webster. You're just gonna have to take off without dropping your chest and with your feet closer together, but you can still think of it sort of as a Webster with your takeoff because your legs are gonna be so wide anyway. So it might feel similar. If you don't have a front flip yet, but you want to get a front flip, then this might be an actual bridge to do that. Because if you can do a cart front and you can do a Webster, but you can't do like a regular running front flip yet, you can just learn the split step front flip and then you'll have a front flip too. And then you'll have a Webster, a cart front, and a regular front flip. Okay, the first thing I want to mention for this method and the other 2 methods is This is really hard to do out of a common tricker cartwheel. It's a lot easier to do out of a proper gymnastics cartwheel. I learned it from doing it out of a gymnastics style cartwheel. I never did gymnastics or anything, but I had a proper cartwheel. And the reason it's helpful is because with a tricking cartwheel, you introduce a lot of twist because of the way you step back and you turn your torso sideways. Even if your arms go over the top, it's still going to introduce a lot of sideways twisting momentum. But with a gymnastics cartwheel, your feet and your arms and your head all go in the same line, and it is a flipping motion, and then you have directional momentum bringing you one way, and there's no contradictory momentum going any other way. So it's a lot easier to do a front flip out of a gymnastics cartwheel than it is to do out of a tricking cartwheel. It's just that you are flipping with your momentum and there's nothing getting in your way, basically. With that being said, I think that you should learn it with a tricking cartwheel, but I think you should probably start by learning it out of a gymnastics cartwheel, and then once you are good at it, convert it to a tricking cartwheel, because then it's going to be a lot easier to understand how to tweak it with that extra added sideways momentum. If you look at my cart fronts, some of them you will see how they're like kind of somewhere in between side flip and cart front. If I'm doing it out of a tricker cartwheel, it all depends on how much I want to work to make it really over the top and like really look like a front flip. If I'm just comboing and I'm just like vibing my did, then I don't care. I'm just gonna go for it and do a cart front and like bounce and twist out of it or whatever. But if I want it to look really clean, then I'm gonna make sure that I get my arms over the top as hard as possible. I will mention that if you have an Arabian already with a step back or standing, then it's going to be a lot easier to learn this than a regular front flip. So really Arabian is a little more superior than regular front flip, but I didn't know Arabian when I learned my cart front, so it is not necessary. But this method is not complicated. If you already have a front flip and you already have a cartwheel, all you're going to need to do is a fast cartwheel, spot over your shoulder, and then turn your torso and just do a normal front flip. What's going to stop most people is the technique of your cartwheel. So I have a full cartwheel tutorial. If you want to go watch that, it goes over everything in terms of power and what you need to do for specific movements. I even talk about cart front as opposed to cart full in that. But I just wanted to mention that if you have a super fast cartwheel, it's going to help you ridiculously with this move, because again, it's kind of like your setup move is building a trampoline so that you can get up in the air. If your trampoline is garbo, you ain't going nowhere. So if you already have an Arabian, what you can do is you can do a cartwheel and then just stand with your feet split and then do an Arabian backwards. However, I find it a lot harder to do that than just going for the cart front, because if you are doing an Arabian split-footed like this, you don't have a lot of power, especially from standing. If you don't have that and you're just working with a front flip, what you want to do is you want to do a cartwheel and then kind of run in one direction and do your punch front. I didn't film that part. Don't ask for an example. It's not complicated. Do a cartwheel, run, front flip. From there, it's all about like kind of what's happening in your brain. There's not like really any progressions to this. If you go really slow, then you're just gonna fall or you're gonna do a dive roll. The next method is gonna be a dive roll. So for a front flip method, all you need to do is a really fast cartwheel, look over there, have your arms above your head, and front flip. It's super simple, it's just not necessarily that easy. So make sure when you're doing a cart front and you're really trying to go for your cart front, your cartwheel needs to make sure that you land in that T position with your arms already up by the time you land that back foot, because then you're here and all you gotta do is look and do a front flip. I really wish I could give you more steps to this, but if you already have a front flip and you already have a cartwheel, you just gotta do it. You just gotta put them together, find a sand pit, find a foam pit, find something soft that you can do it onto, and then get your cart front. For method number 2, we're gonna do a gymnastics dive roll straight over the top. Similar to one of the methods on my cart full tutorial, we are just gonna do a cartwheel, turn, and then do a gymnastics dive roll in the direction of our momentum. So you are going to cartwheel and then turn and then dive roll, making sure that you go straight down your spine and then you tuck and grab your shins. I like to over tuck for my front flips. You can also under tuck like this, but it is imperative that you train for your tuck when you're doing your dive roll, so that way you can get used to the feeling and it's not just like you're touching your hands at the end of your dive roll or something to help you stand up, because then you're gonna be training your front flip without any tuck. If you do it in the roll, you're basically getting more reps of your front flip in without even realizing it because you're just drilling that motion, but on the floor with support. There's two things I want you to focus on. Slowly turning your hips away from your direction of momentum and doing it almost like an Arabian. If you notice, my knee is still facing this direction, but I'm front flipping this way. So it feels like my upper body is doing a front flip, but my lower body is still facing this way. That's super important to understanding your block for your cart front. And the other thing is to extend your dive roll. So if you go really short on your dive roll, it's gonna look similar to this, and you're gonna look like you have no power. You're just kind of going up a little bit, and then you kind of like slam down a little bit. But if you reach really far away from yourself, then you're actually gonna have a ton of power, and it's gonna feel a little dangerous, but you're gonna get used to extending, because when you do your cart front, you're gonna have to extend just like that far dive roll, but you're actually gonna be going up with that. So if you train to extend your dive roll, then what you're gonna do is you're gonna take that extension and you're gonna bring it upwards and then do your dive roll, but in the air, and that will be your front flip. So once it gets to the point where it kind of feels dangerous, like you're like already flipping and you feel like you're just gonna slam on your back, then it's time to go for your cart front. This is a power move, so you're not gonna be able to do many like slow progressions. It's literally cartwheel, stop, dive roll, then cartwheel, dive roll with a lot of momentum, then cartwheel, dive roll real high, tuck your legs, land on your feet, and you got a cart front. Just make sure that when you are standing up, you are reaching as high as humanly possible before you front flip, because you're gonna go really low and you're gonna slam your feet into the ground really hard if you are doing a cart front, but you aren't reaching up, because you wanna set your flip where you want to rotate, and then you wanna think about bringing your body, like curling, hollowing your body up to yourself, and then tucking, spotting through your legs to the ground, and then opening up before you start to fall. That's key for this. A lot of people will land their cart front super low and super painful looking because they don't open up early enough. You don't want to open up too early. If you're like not even rotated over enough and you open, then you're just going to slam on your back. But if you open too late, then you're actually kind of killing your own height. You could have landed standing up, but you instead held the tuck all the way down to the ground, so you were already down here when you landed instead of just extending and coming out of it. An easy drill to do to get used to front flipping like that, if you don't have a great front flip just on the ground, is tuck jumps. So you can just like this, or if you hold it, it'll be like that. And that doesn't feel good. So I like to tuck as wide as I can without making it detrimental. And I like to look down my own body until I see the ground. And then I just start to open up and I kind of drive my feet towards where I'm looking. And I pull my head up away from the ground, and then I land. Remember, if you're doing it from a trick or cartwheel, then you're gonna have a ton of sideways momentum at the end, so you might have to kind of bounce and spin out of it. That's okay. Don't try to stick it if you're resisting it. I have personally hurt my back from trying to do that before. I was doing like a side swipe to front flip, and I landed the side swipe pretty well. I stood up because it's basically a cart front, but with the side swipe as the setup, as if that was the cartwheel. And so I got up really high and I had it solid, but then I was like, no, I must land my front flip facing my direction of momentum, or else it's not a front flip. And because of that, I had all this twisting momentum, and I landed and I stuck here and I resisted and then my lower back tweaked and I couldn't stand up for a while and I was really scared. But it's really important to understand to just go with your momentum and bail if you have to bail, or just walk out of it or bounce out of it with all the spin momentum, because you're probably gonna have spin momentum. I just wanna make sure that you understand to do that. And the third method is just simply the dive roll, but with an elevated surface. Obviously, I would prefer you to do this, but I like to have the other methods separated out just because some people don't have training equipment. But if you have access to a gym or some kind of like bed with enough room, like you gotta have a pretty big house to do this, but if you have something that's about your chest to hip height and you can do a cartwheel or just like front flip drills or rolls over that obstacle, then this can help you a ton. It's basically the superior way to do it other than having a front flip already. So go ahead and do your gymnastics dive roll over that block and get used to opening up at the correct time, because if you hold it too long, just like on the front flip on the last step, you're going to just fall over and roll. What you want to do is you want to dive roll. Make sure you almost get to a handstand before you hit that. That's going to be really important because then you're actually feeling like you're front flipping. I'm assuming if you're doing this step, then you don't have a front flip yet. If you do have a front flip already, basically just do a front flip and land your back on it. But either way, you're going up and over and basically getting to a handstand before you roll, and then as soon as you grab your shins, look down until you see the ground, and then as soon as you see the ground, you just stand up. Don't try to like reach back or reach your legs super far in front of you like this or something. Just stay in that ball until you are upright, and then you just stand up, and the momentum will keep you going forward. It's almost like the more casual you can make the landing, the easier it's going to be for you, rather than trying to like stipulate and concentrate exactly how you're supposed to land, because all of these are going to have a lot of momentum. Next, you want to do your cartwheel and just line it up and make sure that you can do it with actual power and not just slow, because a lot of times what people do is they do their cartwheel and they measure it out and they do all these steps and they're like, yes, walk 5 steps and then cartwheel, okay, cool. And then you get to actually doing it and then you go way closer, because when you do a cartwheel fast, you cover distance faster than when you were doing a cartwheel slow. So make sure that you are spaced away. I'd rather you reach farther and have to like dive to get to the mat rather than coming down and just banging your leg on the mat, because that sucks. But if your mat is high enough, like maybe about chest height, then it's gonna be really hard to do this slow. So you're probably gonna have to do it fast. But if you can do a cartwheel, stop, and then kind of turn and do your dive roll. But it's really hard to get your hips up if you're doing it from a standstill. So I would recommend just doing your cartwheel and kind of spotting. As soon as you're standing up out of the cartwheel, you land, your arms are coming up, you're already looking at the mat, and then you jump and you roll. The tricky part about this is it's very easy to deviate to one side or the other when you're doing this. So this is gonna take a lot of reps, but again, I feel like this is the safest way to learn it. I just think that it's gonna take a lot more practice than the other 2 methods. So if you're the more cautious type, do this method. If you wanna throw caution to the wind, do the other 2 methods. But either way, you're spotting it and you are getting to that gymnastics roll position every single time. If you find yourself rolling on your shoulder, then you're training for cart full and you don't want to do that unless you want to skip cart front and you just want to go to cart full, then that's fine with me. But if you're trying to get cart front specifically, be very rigid about where you're doing it right now. Make sure you are going straight down your spine, but you are not hitting your head. You're hitting your shoulder blades first, so you hit your hands, and then your hands go to your shoulder blades, and then you tuck in a ball. Basically, once you can do this, where you're going really fast and you're doing your dive roll, and you can just not use your hands, and you just tap your back on it, and then you roll, then you are ready for your cart front. If you can't do that ever, then it's not exactly like necessary to do that, because I don't want you to be dangerous, because sometimes I'll have students where I'm like, okay, now take away your hands. And they're like, okay. And they just launch their face at the mat and just like hurt their head. And I'm like, dude, or hurt their neck or something. That's not your goal, okay? Your goal is to do it so high that you don't have to use your hands, but it's not like I should use my hands, but I'm gonna move them because coach said to move them and I smashed my face on the mat. You wanna know where you are in the air, but if you can do it super high and you can spot the mat and then tuck your head and roll on your back without ever having to use your hands except for on your shins, then go for your cart front on the ground. Like I said, kind of quick, very simple movement. It's just kind of a scary movement for a lot of people. So let's move on to common mistakes. The first common mistake I see the most is not going fast enough. If you have a really bad cartwheel or you do your cartwheel really slow, you are absolutely not going to do a cart front. I see a lot of people turn all the way to their direction of momentum and then go slow, so they just basically like fall to their back. It's not going to be good. It's going to hurt a lot. It's also going to be very discouraging, and you're like, oh, I don't even want to do this. You need to go super fast on your cartwheel because that's going to launch you up into the sky. Try to just do your cartwheel and kind of reach up and keep your legs straight. Don't bend at all when you're trying to do this, and it should let you float up into the air. You kind of just bounce up into the air. If you can do that, then you're doing it right. If you have to bend your knees a lot and then jump out of your cartwheel, then you're not going fast enough on your cartwheel and you're not using your cartwheel as a setup. You're actually kind of going bending and stopping, and then going again. You want to just make it roll all the way through and flow to the front flip. So make sure you go really fast on that cartwheel and the front flip. This is not a slow motion move at all. The other common mistake I see is not reaching up enough and not setting for your flip. This is really, really important because wherever you put your center of gravity, that's where you are going to rotate. If you do your cartwheel and you are blocking correctly, right, but you bring your arms over here, then one, you're causing a lot of twisting momentum, and two, you are not going up. You're staying right here, and then you're doing your front flip here. No matter how hard you tuck, you're gonna do your front flip only this high. So make sure when you come out of it, your arms are already up by the time you're touching, no matter what kind of cartwheel you're doing, and then from here, you tuck. I like to wait a half second and kind of spot the ground so that I know I've gotten into the air, and then I do my tuck. And the third most common mistake I see is not tucking enough. So this is a front flip motion. You can completely do it with a straight body, but it's gonna be really, really hard to do that. And if you can do it with a straight body, then you've probably already been doing front flips for a really long time. When you do a cart front, you need to like tuck into hyperspace. You need to like get in here like this. I think about tucking super wide, but sometimes if you have too much twisting momentum and you tuck super wide, it'll cause you to like go to like one side. So you're actually rotating on like a 45-degree axis or something. So just play with it and get to where your tuck feels good. Sometimes my knees are closer together, sometimes my knees are wider. It just depends on what momentum I've set into my cart on that specific cart front. Just make sure that your knees are not all the way together, because if your knees are all the way together like this, then it's very not healthy for your teeth, because most likely you're gonna smash your face on them, and that hurts a lot, and it's not gonna help you with rotation, because if you are tucked wide and tight, you'll rotate a lot faster than if you're tucked like this, because a lot of times when your feet are together, then what happens is your chest stays straight like this, your back stays straight, and you actually have a much farther range to travel. Whereas if you're tucking wide and tight, you're actually rotating a lot faster. So tuck tight and tuck relatively wide. And that's about all I got for you on cart front. There are so many different ways to learn this. I purposely omit trampoline because I'm definitely gonna do trampoline specific tutorials in the future, and I feel like it's a kind of whole nother motion to do things on the trampoline. But you can always use that as a progression too. If you know how to do fronts on the trampoline or cart front or aerial front on the trampoline, that can help you out. But like I said, this is a very simple motion, but not necessarily the safest feeling, and you have to kind of know what you're doing when you're going for this, or else you're just gonna slam yourself on the ground. So it is simple, but not necessarily easy. But I hope this helped you get or improve your cart front. If it helped you, please hit the like button. Please leave a comment down below and let me know what you want to see next from me. And please help me on my quest to 1,000 subs by subscribing down below. And until next time, please stay safe and healthy, and I'll see you guys later. How about them election results though?